Well, hello, everybody. This is Jonathan Weedman with Community Conversations, presented by Outlook Newspaper Group. And I am so pleased today, and I'm so excited to have with us a dear friend of many, many years, one of the true treasures of Los Angeles, one of our really great civic leaders and people who we all just think the world of, truly. And that's Deidre Lind. So Deidre, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to be here. It's great to see your face.
How are you? Yes, indeed. So how are you feeling this morning? It is Sunday morning, and we're starting to, just get our foot on the ladder.
I had my coffee. I'm all set to go.
Good. Well, I really am excited you're on the show today, on the broadcast today, on the podcast today. What are we going to call this thing? Because your experience and your background is so rich, and your perspective, I think, unique for so much going on in our city right now. And so I'm glad we're together to talk. I was thinking about it. We first met over 20 years ago when you were at Mattel. But
we were very young.
Yes, we were much younger. Well, let's start at the beginning. I always like to ask folks, where did you grow up? And what led you on this path to community and working in philanthropy?
I'm a third generation Angelino. This city is my home. This is where my roots are. I love this city. There is so much about this city that is me in so many ways. So I started here and I'm still here today. And I think that says a lot about this city and how much I just love being here. But I started on this journey thinking I was going to do psychology and I was going to help people one at a time. And I was going to do individual psychology work. And that was going to be my path to the future. And I quickly realized that I had something inside me that wanted to do something bigger. Not bigger meaning more impactful, but bigger meaning more people I wanted to help. And I think there was a moment in time when I was getting my master's degrees and I realized that I was frustrated. I couldn't understand what it was. And I started to think about this policy work that I had never really explored before. And so that led me down the path to start back in the 90s, what was then called government and community relations, which was really this pairing of policy work and community work in the corporate setting. And I did that for 10 years and then moved into getting to do it on the world stage with Mattel, the toy company. And at the time, and I talk about this pretty openly, after 10 years doing that work, and we can talk more about that, I, as a woman, felt really conflicted about being a mom and trying to figure out how to balance all of that, and was fortunate enough to have a partner who was able to support us. And we decided we were going to take a step back, and I took a step out of the corporate life. And it is a conversation that, I hope women more and more will talk about, because it is a complicated conversation to have. But I chose to step away from that and to do some consulting work, and then got a call from this mayor who had just taken office, who I knew a little bit, but not really, and wanted someone who understood philanthropy here in Los Angeles to start this program that he thought about and wasn't quite sure what it would look like, called the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles. And it's really hard to say no when you hear someone talk about a vision that's so aligned with your own, to really make a difference across 4 million residents in the city of Los Angeles. And so started that journey in 2014 and haven't looked back. And here I am today.
I love it. I love it. Well, it has been it's been compelling and important work that you've done. And but back to Mattel, I have to ask you, because I remember, when you were at Mattel and when I was at Wells Fargo, the whole notion of corporate philanthropy, of civic engagement, of volunteerism, of doing well by doing good was relatively new. Companies and corporations were just realizing that consumers expected companies to do more than just produce their product or their service. So talk a little bit about Mattel and what that was like. And of course, I wanted to ask you, did you get any toys? Did you get to see all that part of the business? Because Mattel's such a legendary company. I mean, it's like the Disney company. It's the same idea.
I will say there were moments of time, perhaps, when we were a little stressed out, when we would have maybe some Hot Wheels races down the hallway. I had a brush for Barbie's hair in my office, and when conference calls were a little boring, I would style Barbie's hair, which was very calming. No, it really,
You.
what a great moment, Jonathan, that you and I got to be in the corporate social responsibility world at that time. There was really a transition at that time when companies were used to doing that checkbook giving, where it was write a check here, write a check there. Your CEO is going to go sit at this rubber chicken dinner or that rubber chicken dinner, and that was kind of it. To really, I think, this transformation of first understanding what assets does your company have beyond just money that you can really use to make a difference. And that is the work that we did at Mattel that I'm just was so fun to be a part of. We went through a process called shared value, which was sort of a buzzy word at the time, but it's really kind of an interesting model where if you think about kind of this Venn diagram, right, of what are the social needs in a community? What are people struggling with? And then you lay that over what's the business plan for the company? And that's where it gets kind of interesting but complicated, because it wasn't like companies were saying to their CSR teams, oh, here's our business plan for the next 10 years. You know, we plan to grow in these markets. We plan to grow with these brands. They weren't used to revealing that information. So that was kind of an interesting new pivot to the work. And then you think about what is within the company kind of world that you can use to address that social issue. And so we took a year to really go through that process and had very, very smart people working on it. And, you know, it's funny when I look back at it, Jonathan, I think about, you know, it was a revelation. It was such a big moment for us when we finally pinpointed exactly what it was we were going to do. But when you look at it now, you think, oh, of course it was. It makes sense. And it was this idea of play, that Mattel knows play, that play is a social issue, and that there are barriers to play that Mattel can address. And so we ended up really creating our whole entire global CSR work around these 4 barriers to play that we had identified, and really tapping into all of the different assets that were across the Mattel company, whether it was Hot Wheels or Barbie or Uno, or the people of our company, or the value of the brand and the credibility that it lends to a specific issue or project. And so it became a really, really fun experiment that we were able to really impact the lives of millions of children around the world.
Well, and it's so interesting because it really was the beginning of corporate philanthropy and social responsibility as we really know it today and expect it today. Prior to that, I mean, literally just a few years prior to that, it
Yeah.
was the purview of the most senior executives of the company, or somebody who was an important customer who would say, I want you to support this thing, and they'd write the check, and they were to all the usual suspects we know, and they're great organizations, but they were to the Red Cross, the United Way, and to the Boys and Girls Club, and that was it.
Yeah.
And the idea of diversity and investing in diverse communities and social issues, more progressive things, was never really even thought of. So it was a very exciting time. Now, let me just pivot for a second and just ask you a question, because you are in a unique spot where you are in the mayor's office, and I would just ask you, what do you feel are the urgent issues facing our city right now? I think our nation is at a crossroads, and we've had division and challenges in our world, unlike I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And I would say this perhaps for so many people of our vintage. Are you optimistic, or do you think we got a few more challenges ahead of us right now from your vantage point?
It's such a tricky question, Jonathan, because first of all, I am an optimist. You know me, I'm always looking at the opportunities, and I feel like LA is so rich with opportunity. And that doesn't mean we don't have serious serious challenges that we are obligated, morally obligated to address. The fact that people are sleeping on our streets is a moral imperative for us to solve. I really believe that. I think our education system, I'm a product of public school. Both of my children have gone through or are still in public school, but that doesn't mean that it's working well for every for every student in our city. And I think that's a really important issue that we need to be addressing. But we've got opportunity. And people talk about, oh, politics is so divisive. And yes, oh my gosh, the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of divisiveness, but we also saw an infrastructure bill pass in the last month that is going to yield millions of jobs, 1.5 million, I believe, to more jobs across this country. And, for that to be able to pass and for that to be able to move, it wasn't easy, but I do think it symbolizes opportunity for us. And, I think COVID, we have to mention COVID. COVID gave us a glimpse of what we can do together, and it gave us a glimpse of our greatest challenges. And so we as a community have to be thinking about our neighbors, which we don't always think about. And we have to get back to that place of feeling connected to our communities, both our physical neighbors, but also our neighbors in this city and this region that we call the Los Angeles region.
Yeah, I'll tell you that the COVID was a time of great appraisal, I think, for all of us personally, in our lives, with our families, with our work, because we were at home, we had time to reflect. And I love what you just said, because we do need to reconnect, and we need to reestablish, and, as I like to say sometimes, regroup and rearm and redeploy. Um, and I will say that Mayor Garcetti, the administration's response to COVID was nothing short of extraordinary. I think we set an example for the rest of the country with thoughtful reaction, measured but effective. And it was, from my perspective, impressive. And one of the things that I really love most about what has been accomplished by Mayor Garcetti and his team has been the continuation of the public-private partnership, of the intersection of the connectivity between not just corporations and foundations, but individuals, bringing them together and bringing them to bring their talents and their resources to help the city. And you really led that effort in a very prominent way with the Mayor's Fund. There had never been a Mayor's Fund before. I know that there have been some templates like it in other cities, but I personally saw the fund as not just a way to deliver resources and financial support to nonprofits and issues, but equally about bringing people together around these issues who otherwise never would be. And you've led that work, and remarkably well. And so can you talk a little bit about that in the Mayor's Fund and what that's been like?
I mean, I think you have to start first with COVID, right? It's a crisis. March 13th, we shut down of 2020. We literally shut down. No one could have anticipated what was going to happen the day after, or the fact that 26,661 lives have been lost due to the COVID virus. And that's a number from 3 weeks ago. So that number has probably gone up. I'm sure it's gone up, So we have to start there to kind of think about, you're right, there was never a Mayor's Fund before. Public-private partnerships was something that had happened for a long time. You remember, or the story of Buffy Chandler gathering her friends together to say, we need this music, this hub of culture and entertainment in our city. So public-private collaboration has happened for a long time. There was never a separate nonprofit that was able to drive it. And so that's what we tried to do over the course since 2014. And we built some structures, and we did some really great work. We launched college promise programs, ensuring that every single youth who graduates in good standing from high school has free community college for 2 years. We paid for it with private dollars, and then public dollars kicked in and have continued the program. So that's the kind of work that we're really excited about. But when COVID hit, it was like, wait a second, what can government do that the private sector, what can government do today? And to move government quickly is really hard. That's
Yeah.
not what government is meant to do, right? And we see that every day on the homelessness crisis, I have to say, right? Government doesn't move fast. So that was where we stood up and said, you know what? This is ours to be able to help this city drive change. So when seniors who would go daily to their senior centers for food weren't able to go because we were all in lockdown mode, we immediately got hot meals delivered to those seniors, to thousands of seniors across the city. Or when domestic violence rates were going up, we were getting calls on the hotlines. The domestic violence rates are up, but all the shelters were shut down because you couldn't live in communal settings because of COVID. We then immediately set up at what was called Project Safe Haven, which we paid for hotel rooms for these individuals to leave their abusive situations and to have a safe place to be able to get back on their feet. So that's where we were able to step in quickly. And then our direct cash programs, supporting over 150,000 residents in our city with direct cash assistance immediately following this crisis. Since then, there have been significant public dollars that have come through different programs from the state, from the federal government, and from local government. But at the time that it happened, when people literally weren't able to go to the restaurant to work, they didn't know how they were going to put food on their tables for their families. And so we were able to step in and to help with that. And, when I think about what you were also talking about, Jonathan, in terms of being a hub, a place for people to come together for Angelenos, we went from a couple thousand donors a year to 13,000 individual donors who would send us an envelope of five $1 bills. We had Girl Scout troops sending us money. And we had people stepping up and saying, I have a 7-figure donation I want to give to you. How can I do that? So we had all kinds of people in this city and outside the city giving to us because they wanted to give to something that they felt could make a difference now. And that's, I think, the beauty of the Mayor's Fund and the work that we did during COVID was being that place where the mayor would step up and give us all a sense of reassurance on TV at night as the leader of not just the city, but of the region.
Yes.
And people felt like, okay, we've gotten through another day of this crisis. How can I help?
He was omnipresent. I mean, and I don't think any of you took a break in almost 2 years seriously, because it was our, day after tomorrow is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. It was the Pearl Harbor moment in many respects, where we had to mobilize and pivot on a dime to address this situation. I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did. I was praying that it would be over quickly. Yeah. And here it is, almost 2 years, and we're still in the middle of it. And I hope that I think we learned a lot. You're right, and I hope that this thing is behind us sooner than not. My fear is that we're going to be living with it for a long time.
I think I would just also add, Jonathan, and maybe this is my optimism, I think that systems have changed and people have changed for the better in many ways because of this. I think that folks understand the importance of childcare in a way that they might not have understood before. They understand the importance of frontline workers in a way that they haven't before. And really small businesses, I feel like there's more and more discussions, at least in the circles that I'm in, about like, how do we support these small businesses? Small businesses are the lifeblood of our community. And I didn't always hear those conversations before. And I think COVID helped folks realize this is people's livelihoods, and we have an obligation, if we're able to be able to support these folks.
Oh, and I think you're absolutely right. We're going to have some incredibly great learnings from this experience. We'll emerge from it stronger and better. But boy, talk about a convergence of, the politics, the personalities, and COVID and the economy. It has been an extraordinary time. One of the things that I love to ask about, Deidre, is leadership. I've had some great bosses in my career. I've had some bosses who haven't been so great. And if you're listening, you know who you are out there. Let me tell you, if you're not in jail. how would you describe your leadership style? And what, in your estimation, makes a great leader?
I think a little bit, I think it's a little bit of a lot of things, quite frankly. I look to really amazing leaders. I was thinking about this the other day. The first um, person that I really felt was this amazing leader was Eleanor Roosevelt.
You bet.
We had to read a biography about her in, I think it was like fourth or fifth grade. I was fairly young. And I remember thinking about, wow, she's this woman who's so humble and yet has done so much. And so that has always stuck with me. So I would say that part of my leadership style is to be humble, but to gracefully acknowledge your successes. And I struggle because that is sort of a balance, right? I probably don't always do either part of it so well. And I work to do that every day, but I think that's so important. And the other piece I would say is your team. Right now at the Mayor's Fund, we have a team of 5 people who are arguably the most amazing team that I've ever worked with. I have to say, not just because they're my team now, but I've worked with lots of teams over the years, and we've gone through some employee changes at the Mayor's Fund. But I will say that the team that we have right now brings unique, diverse perspectives to the table. They are passionate about Los Angeles, and they are good at what they do. And so, what I've been struggling with lately is, how do I get out of their way to be the best that they can be to do their jobs effectively? And so I think a good leader, while staying humble and really understanding the successes that you have, also puts together a great team that can really deliver on success, and then gets out of their way and helps them along the way. I always talk about, whenever I have a new employee, I always tell them, you are building the path in this organization, and I'm here to put up some guardrails along the way to make sure that you stay focused on the vision that we have for this organization. But it's up to you to decide what you do with it. And I think that a good leader gets out of the way of a really good employee. And I think, the other thing I would say, Jonathan, is I feel really blessed at the moment because there are really great leaders in City Hall. And I don't think they get given much credit right now. We're sort of at a moment where there's a lot of critiquing that happens of folks, but we've got so many smart people who care so deeply about the city and every single resident. For those of you who've met the mayor, you know that he shakes every hand, and he looks every person in the eye, and he cares about you as a person wherever you are in this city. And that, to me, is inspiring.
Truly.
And that's what I think a good leader does too, is they inspire others, whether it's through their actions or through their words or through their deeds.
I love what you say, because I had a boss many years ago who said to me, your job is to come in here every day and make me look good. And I looked at this guy and I said, no. Your job is to come in here every day and make me look good, help me achieve, help me do well, because then you will have done well. And this fellow didn't last very long at the company where I was. He had it backwards. I love what you said, and I also love what you just said about the team down at City Hall, because politics is such an unforgiving business. A friend of mine is going to be running for the Pasadena City Council, and I can't imagine why he wants to do that. I think you may know my grandfather was governor of California, and it requires just the hide of an elephant and to stay focused on the work you're doing, because you're right. In politics, in public life, you will always have those people who are trying to tear you down, trying to harm you, trying to take you off message and distract you. And I think that you and the mayor and the entire team at City Hall really need to be congratulated for staying the course during what has been one of the most difficult, challenging times, certainly in my life, in my lifetime. So thank you for that. Let me ask you one thing. You mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt. Do you have any other heroes, any other people influenced you growing up? Personal, public, celebrities, historic figures?
I mean, of course, I'm on the Michelle Obama bandwagon. I keep her book on my on my nightstand, and I refer to it, just because I think it's very selfless to be a politician or to be a politician's partner. And I think to stay on message, as you said, Jonathan, that's inspiring to me. But then I also think about people in my own life. I mean, I'm so blessed to have parents that, believed in me. Even when I had crazy ideas, my parents both believed in me, and they both came from very humble places. My mom's a school teacher. My dad was an accountant who jumped from job to job. These are not folks that could even imagine that their daughter would work around City Hall, let alone have an office in City Hall. And so they always believed in me. That was incredibly powerful. And then, of course, I had bosses all along the way. It kind of gets to this other idea of, what do you tell people? You do informational interviews too, right? When you've got students who are sitting in classrooms in universities and they want to know, like, what's their career path? What should they do? And, I think about this differently over the past 2 years, I will say, but so much of it had to do with being in the right moment at the right time, and being an intern in Mayor Reardon's office a couple of years ago.
Right.
and having a job description faxed to his chief of staff, and the chief of staff walked over, because I was the intern that happened to be sitting at the intern desk at the time, and getting it dropped on my desk. And that led to my first job at Kaiser Permanente. But so I think about, how do we help folks understand that? How do we now, in our own positions, lend our hand out to as many people as we can? And how do we get more people into those networks, particularly people of color, young people of color, young people with disabilities? I think folks that have had structural barriers that have been put against them, or that they've come up against in their lifetime, I think it's our obligation to do more of that. So when people link in me, I always accept, because I feel like that's what we need to be doing in these jobs that we have now. And the folks that have helped me every step of the way, whether it was that chief of staff who dumped that job description on my desk, or the person in the mayor's office who called me for the first time because it was a friend of a friend who knew me. Those are the people that, always gave me my hand up, and I'll be forever grateful for them. These are folks that are still in my life, actually, most of them. So they do inspire me, and those are leaders that I think about.
That's awesome. That is just awesome. Well, I always love to ask folks, you grew up here in this city, and I'm sure, like me, as I did, every street, every intersection, every building has a memory, has a touch point for you. I still get Olympic and Pico confused, and I still get Beverly and Melrose confused. I'll be driving by one of them, and I'll say, wait, am I in Beverly or Melrose? For all my life. But you started talking about this city. What is it you love about our city the most, and what makes Los Angeles special to you? And you work so hard, but what do you do? What does Deidre Lind do for fun? How do you blow steam? How do you recreate? How do you recharge your batteries?
Well, I spend my Sunday mornings with you, Jonathan.
And more to come.
I mean, what other city can you get a bulgogi taco or a California roll, or this mishmash of cultures that happens in our city every day? I thrive off of that, frankly. And I love to be able to drive 2 blocks to the empanada, one of the best empanada places in the city, and then go another 2 blocks and get the best soul food, and then drive another, 5 blocks and get this amazing Ethiopian food. And so food is apparently something important in my life, but it represents really just the incredible diversity that our city has. We did a program in the Mayor's Fund called LA Original, which is a branding initiative for makers in the city. So really for
Right, right.
individuals, the creative entrepreneurs of our city. And it still is in today, laoriginal.com. You can go to
Mhm.
it and buy your holiday gifts from so many of these amazing makers. And we went through this exercise of kind of understanding what makes LA unique. What is our brand? One of the things that stuck out was the horizontal nature of our city, which people think is like so awful and so terrible. But the truth is, I think that's what makes us really special. We are a horizontal city. We are not a vertical city. And when you think about what that means, it means we can encompass so many more people and so many more cultures and so many more practices and systems and just being a part of this big city because of our horizontal nature, I think is really special. And yes, you can go to the beach in 5 minutes and you can go to the mountains in an hour and you can enjoy all of that. That's what I love about our city. And what I do for fun is I try to take advantage of our city as much as possible. I love the Ciclavia program where we
Yeah.
close the streets. It's actually happening this morning that we're missing. It's back in action post-COVID, and where you get to explore part of the city that you might not have ever seen before, and you do it on your bicycle or on your roller skates or on your skateboard, or literally you're walking. So you really get to appreciate that community. And I love doing that with my family. I love the sporting events in our city. We have so many sporting events, and that to me, it's fun. And LA has 2 football teams and 2 soccer teams, although I guess it's not called soccer. And we even have a women's soccer team that's starting this summer, which I'm super excited about. And that makes it just fun to be around so many Angelinos that are so excited and passionate about their team. I love that energy and that enthusiasm of these sports teams. So
I'm thinking
yeah.
while you're saying this, I'm thinking we have USC, we have UCLA, we have Occidental, we have, I think, the greatest orchestra in the world. We have the
Yes.
2 most
Yeah.
iconic performance venues. We've got
Yeah.
Hollywood. We have culture and arts and um,
Museums. Think about
I'm
all
not
the
leaving. I've
museums.
decided I'm staying. That's all there is to it.
We have a new museum of narrative art that is going to be unbelievable, right in the heart of our city that's
That's
being
right.
built.
That's right. That's
And
good.
the Academy Museum. Yeah.
So it's such an exciting time. And we've got the Olympics coming. I mean, it never
Yeah.
stops. Well, I oh I could reminisce and talk about, whenever I'm feeling a little challenged and preoccupied, I go to the farmer's market. I always feel better. There's so many places like that for all of us in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, as we start to wrap up, I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours about all this stuff. I just um, but is there anything else you'd like to share as we wrap up, Deidre? Um, I want to continue this conversation. We'll do one of these again real soon. Um, but any other thoughts you'd like to share with us right now before we
I
close?
mean, I would just say, Jonathan, and you know this, I think too, none of us, no sector can approach these issues that we're facing alone. And I feel like we sort of talked about all the great things of LA, but there is a massive issue of just moral imperative that we resolve around homelessness. Government cannot solve it alone. Private sector can't solve it alone. Companies cannot solve it. It will take all of us. And so when I think about whether it's homelessness or bringing more global business to our city in anticipation of the World Games, and there's so much that we can do, but we have to do it together. And I really just want all of us to keep thinking about how we can not be afraid of these different sectors, but how we can work together. I think that the community, the corporate social responsibility world here in Los Angeles, we started that group, and you were one of the founding folks there too, Jonathan,
Remember,
where we brought folks together to say, look, we just kind of share best practices amongst our different companies. And yes, more headquarters of businesses are leaving, but we still have such an incredible growth of business in our city and in our region. We've got to figure out how to work together. And I think that group still meets pretty regularly. And So I just want, all of us to think about how we can just keep working together, because we're not going to get through to the world that we know we can be and the society we know we can be if we aren't all working together, working with each other.
Wise words, true words, and beautifully said. Deidre, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As I said, I feel like we could talk more and more and more, and next time we will. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Everybody else out there as well, and just thank you so much for being on the show, on the podcast, and we'll do this again real soon.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for all you do to be able to help bring to light these conversations. It's really exciting. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.